Film is a medium that can adapt its narrative to properly reflect how people feel. In the early 1990s, films like Paris is Burning, The Living End, and Poison were all critically acclaimed at film festivals and only shared one thing in common. They were all unapologetically gay. The uprising of these independent films marked the birth of new queer cinema. The new queer cinema movement was coined by film theorist B. Ruby Rich and was a stepping stone for LGBTQ+ representation in film. Never before did films showcase complex relationships that didn't conform to society's expectations. Alongside showcasing authentic representation, the new queer cinema movement popularized LGBTQ+ stories on the big screen, and these stories can be viewed as an indirect response to Reagan-era politics and our government's silence during the AIDS epidemic in the 1980s. Paris is Burning is a documentary directed by Jennie Livingston, and it focuses on the drag dance competitions or balls in New York during the late 1980s. It addresses issues of race, queerness, and poverty, which also make up the core themes of the film, but the issue of AIDS is loitering in the background throughout the whole film. In addition to this, the entirety of drag culture at the time was dissected for the audience, from mothers to houses, and from throwing shade to voguing. Each of these things are dissected in a way that will be both entertaining and educational for the viewers. As someone who was not fully aware but was curious to know more about drag culture before viewing the documentary, I found it to be the perfect introduction. Just like a member of the drag community describes it at the beginning of the film, it's like crossing into the looking glass. Once you view the culture, you either love it and understand it or you don't. There aren't any fictional characters here. Behind every costume and makeup, there's a real person who is trying to enjoy their life. The ball circuits acted as a form of escapism from the common struggles the queer community faced, but unfortunately, not everyone saw it this way. Livingston ended up capturing something that is hard to put into words. You have a group of people, on one hand, who have been marginalized in popular culture for their entire lives, as well as deemed insignificant by their own government. And yet, they finally say enough is enough. They make this film, and it's critically acclaimed, and by doing so, it's breaking the status quo. And it didn't just end here. Hollywood eventually picked up on the fact that there was a pink money market for these movies and started producing big-budget LGBTQ+ movies in the 2000s, with the first notable one being Brokeback Mountain in 2005. This marked the start of a new era of representation, where LGBTQ+ movies were not only made to please a specific crowd anymore, they were now being produced to draw in the biggest crowds possible. This ended up diluting representation across the board, making it harder to find similar authentic stories to those told in the 90s. One could argue that this isn't all that bad since there is now more representation than ever before. I'd argue that the average quality of representation has never been worse, however. It is now hard to find a modern LGBTQ+ movie that feels as if it were not made with profit in mind. And even if this wasn't a problem, all you need to do is look back at the history of film. Before the new queer cinema movement, sure, it was hard to find LGBTQ+ representation coming from lead characters in film, but that doesn't mean it didn't exist. The films that did showcase it usually did so through subtext, or what we call queer coding today. These filmmakers took a risk for their time, a risk that should still be respected to this day. This isn't to say that all modern LGBTQ+ movies are bad. I just think that it could be better. That's all.
with their kind. You know, they want to be gay and gay, you know.
Because probably like, just like the community, in a religious community, they want to pray together a lot, right? Well, this gay community, they might want to, or they like want to be together.